Hello and welcome to day 14 of our Advent calendar. Do you know, day 14 means that it's only 11 days till Christmas. Yay! Now I wonder, who is God going to send to rescue us? Remember, Adam and Eve listened to Satan's lies instead of God and turned their back on God. So God punished them, so they needed rescuing. We need rescuing because we're like Adam and Eve. Who was that rescuer going to be? Is it Abraham? God promised him lots of good things, didn't he? Land and people would be blessed by him. But Abraham died and his sons didn't follow God. So the rescuer is not Abraham. What about Moses, who God made leader? Is it him? Well, even Moses disobeyed God, so it's not him. And yesterday we heard about King David. But he was a good king and he encouraged God's people to listen to God. So is it going to be David? Well, no. David also died and disobeyed God. So he can't be our rescuer. Well, let me tell you about David's son, Solomon. God made Solomon king. And because Solomon asked nicely, God made him very wise. Maybe he's our rescuer. Let's find out a bit more. Now, we know what it means to be king, don't we? Have a crown on and you rule. But what does it mean that Solomon was wise? Well, it has to do with being good at weighing up what is right or wrong, good or bad. And you know, we've got a picture to colour, don't we, for our Advent today? And that's a set of scales. We put a heavier weight in there, it tips that way. Now I want to show you my set of scales that I have at home. Now you can see that the dial's right roughly in the middle, showing that these are of equal weight. Well, if I put some heavier weights in there, what happens to that dial? Oh, tips that way. Now I have another weight. Let's see if it's heavier than those other weights. What's going to happen? Oh, tip that way. Those are heavier. Now that's kind of what Solomon did. He weighed up what was good, what was bad, what was right or what wrong. He listened to God's idea of right and wrong. That's why he was called a wise king. Now I'm going to read you the story from the Bible of Solomon. David's son Solomon became God's wise king. With gold and wood, he built a great house. It was a beautiful place called a temple. And all God's people came to see Solomon to ask his advice. One day a queen made a long journey, possibly all the way from Egypt, to see Solomon, to see his palace and the temple he built. She asked Solomon lots of questions, and God gave Solomon wisdom for them all. The queen was amazed and greatly helped by all he said, and was blessed by God for having come. So you see, God was keeping all his promises to Abraham. He had already made Abraham into a great nation, and he had given Israel, God's people, the land. And now God's king was bringing God's blessing to other peoples of the earth. Remember the queen? She lived a long way off, and she was blessed by Solomon. Does this make you wonder if Solomon might be God's forever king? Could he be the promised one to bring God's blessing to everyone? I'll let you on a little secret. As we'll find out tomorrow, Solomon was a blessing and did lots of good, but there was another sad day. Solomon turned his heart away from God, and so did his sons. So Solomon is not God's forever king to bring blessing to everyone. We need someone who will be like God, knowing right from wrong. So do you know who God promised would be the wisest king forever? who would bring God's blessing to everyone who trusts him forever? Yes, you got it. It's Jesus. Jesus is an even wiser king because he is God and he knows everything. Wow, isn't God good? Now I'm just going to say a little prayer. We're just talking to God. And I'm going to thank him for the wise King Jesus. Dear God, thank you that you promised a king who would be very wise. Help us to remember that Jesus is the wise king, and help us to bring our questions to him and trust his answers. Amen. Now don't forget to colour in your picture and remember that Jesus is an even wiser king because he is God and knows everything, and we can trust him. Thanks for listening. Find out more tomorrow. Bye-bye.